Hey there, this is Dan Heaton, host of the Tomorrow Society podcast, and today I'm going to do an audio commentary of a video from a trip that I took to Walt Disney World in May 1998. Lots of cool attractions were either just starting or were near the end of their run, and we are going to start right now with Disney's Animal Kingdom, which had just opened on April 22nd, 1998, and now it's Festival of the Lion King. But if you notice right away, it is still outside. If you can believe it, you see those bleachers up there with the outdoor area. This is before they even put it in an enclosed theater in Camp Mini Mickey. And I have to tell you, it was super hot in that theater because they did not realize it was going to be that popular. So at the time, they basically put it in this temporary structure in Camp Mini Mickey so they could have more for people to do because there wasn't really that much to do at Animal Kingdom at the start. They didn't have Asia at all yet, so there was a limited number of attractions. And this area was put in fairly late and was not intended to stay as long as it was. I mean, Festival of the Lion King, for example, went into its air-conditioned theater and stayed there until June of 2014, where it ultimately moved to Africa when they started construction on Pandora, the world of Avatar, and now it has a really nice theater there. But as you can tell, as we see the performers singing Circle of Life, that this theater was very different. And also, this show, while similar, did not appear to be as involved. You didn't have as many of the really big floats and everything involved with it. I mean, you do see the elephant right back there, but I don't believe it was the same level. I don't remember being put into groups like they've done ever since. But still, an impressive show, especially at the time. Even given the fact that we were in this small theater, it held a lot fewer people, as you can see. But also just one of the more impressive elements of Disney's Animal Kingdom. Because, we went there, we were lucky enough to go a month after the park opened. And you had the Tree of Life with the stuffed to be a bug. You had Kilimanjaro Safaris, which we are seeing right now, which was the flagship attraction at the time. You can see the hippo pool right there. And Kilimanjaro Safari was interesting because this was the original with Simba 1 and Wilson and the Big Red, Little Red story. And everything was new and cool. I mean, it's such a massive attraction, but you had a little more of the story with the poachers and everything else, which didn't come later. Speaking of Little Red and Big Red, there is an elephant right there. And I know this video is a little rough, but I do love seeing the original version with them playing the music that, of course, is used partially for the Radio Harambe podcast intro. But just, it was really fun to get to ride Kilimanjaro Safari so early on and to have that kind of, I mean, right now it's still mostly the same, and I think they've done some interesting things to make it better. But at the time, I mean, it blew me away, the fact that zoos have progressed a lot since May 1998. But at the time, getting to drive through this huge expanse, which is still amazing today. I mean, look at how close that giraffe is right next to the vehicle there. And that happens fairly often when you ride this attraction. And so, unlike some other elements which have changed, it has not. Well, we are moving on to, at the time, the Disney MGM Studios. And the great movie ride. Still one of my favorite attractions that Disney has ever done. And you can see there that the driver was being accosted there by, if you can believe it, the Western scene. We actually got the Western scene. This was not the gangster, which you would typically get, especially near the end before the attraction closed in 2017. This is 1998, so the attraction had only been open 9 years, was still very popular, and you can see the flames going on behind the Western guy who has hijacked our car. Quick shot here of the alien and Jones and every other elements of it, leading up to the moment when, unfortunately, our hijacker goes for the treasure, and you know how that goes. But great movie ride remains to me, especially given the 1989 time frame. Super impressive attraction. Oh, it's the magic of the movies. Yes, we're cheering for our original driver as we enter the Wizard of Oz section, which, again, one of those expansive large scenes. You did have animatronic large scenes. If you think of Pirates of the Caribbean, of course, but also World of Motion with the traffic jam. But if you go in there at this point, I mean, this witch animatronic that is coming up is super impressive, as you see her right now.
Who killed the Witch of the East? Was it you? Well, my little
I also like the way that the witch interacts with the driver who then responds. And it's just a nice touch and the idea of movie magic that we are inside the movies. And I know the Great Movie Ride needed some updates, but it's really too bad that they couldn't have found a way to keep it in some fashion. And that capacity was so large. I mean, I like Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, but still, the capacity and just the salute to the movies, it feels weird not having it there. And now we are switching gears to Indiana Jones. And this, again, not an early version, but this is one of those shows that I did see. As if you watched my audio commentary of the Disney MGM Studios trip, which we took in the summer of 1989, I talked about how the version shown there of the Indiana Jones Sun Spectacular was a very early version. It was not the version that you're seeing here, which is more similar, though I know they have made some changes recently when they returned after the pandemic. But now you see Indiana Jones, making a run. And you have to say again, I was not a great videographer, also not a great camera, so we do lose focus sometimes. But in general, this show is fun. I love that you get to have some audience participation, the different types of stunts that we see. You saw Indiana Jones earlier, and now we have the acrobatic guys who are, with the swords spinning around and everything they're doing. It's just a lot of fun. And this is one of the shows I appreciate a really good stunt show. And I know you've had more high tech ones put in place, like the Jason Bourne one at Universal, but this one still holds up pretty well, especially given the fact that it opened in 1989 with a smaller version at first, but quickly to similar to what we have today. So you're talking, over 30 years easily that it's been in place. And now Indy and Marion are in trouble here. But just, I still remember randomly seeing Neil Patrick Harris at the stadium when he was like Doogie Howser, age 16, getting the VIP treatment to watch this show. We were not that close. But just in general, I think fun show with lots of cool stunts. And I appreciate that, I mentioned the Great Movie Ride being taken away. The fact that this show is still in place. There are so few things from the very early days of the Disney MGM Studio place. We've lost Monster Sound Show, lost Superstar Television. So many other elements are gone, and parks have to change. That's okay, but I appreciate that you have one such a high capacity theater attraction, but two a stunt show that kind of really fits with the overall movie theme that they started with. Like now we're more moved into some great attractions like Rise of the Resistance and Slinky Dog Dash and everything else. Very different approach, more on par with something Universal's done. The Universal also, like I mentioned, does great stunt shows, but still, Disney, I think, had a slightly different take here. And you see now the truck driving around with an impressive stunt with the big explosion, which is, who doesn't love explosions and feeling the fire from the theater, which, again, a pretty common part of the early days. We saw the fire earlier in the Western scene, the early days of the Disney MGM Studios theme park. Now we've moved on to Epcot, and Epcot in May 1998 was so wonderful. I mean, look at Spaceship Earth there. This is the time of the Flower and Garden Festival. As you can see, the original fountain, which now is kind of like the fountain looks now with the monorail going by, and we have moved in to the Jeremy Irons version of Spaceship Earth. Love this version. I've decided I think this is my favorite version. I'm very close with Walter Cronkite. I love Tomorrow's Child, but I think just as a total package, especially given the descent, this is the best version of Spaceship Earth. It's the quintessential version. I do think they made some cool additions to the Ascent with the Judi Dench version, but this one I think still takes the cake. I mean, the music is better compared to the overall to the Walter Cronkite version, and now we are going past the printing press, which is kind of a classic scene that is still basically there in the same form today. And Spaceship Earth just can't get old. I know it's interesting to note that scene on the right, though, with the theater performers, which changed quite a bit today with the focus on mathematics. And now we have the cinema area with the radio players, which has changed slightly today. It's not the same. You have the guys sitting down and giving the news. And then some of the other elements have changed significantly. But the overall kind of vibe of this area here with the movies and radio still pretty much exists today, but in a different form. And then as we go into kind of the high-tech section, this has changed significantly because, of course, you had the computer room scene. But now we have moved on to the big dome and the view of the Earth, which kind of looks like a face. If I zoom in very closely, and we're jumping over to Horizons with Jules Verne. Horizons, my all-time favorite Disney attraction, which I know is kind of a cliche. A lot of people love Horizons, but watching this and the clips I have, still such a classic. I love these early scenes with the rocket that hits the eye of the moon right there. But, you know, the guys at Retro Disney World have did an amazing Horizons update that looks much better than this, but I still love that I have these videos, including the big Omnisphere with, you know, a precursor to Soarin', where you feel like you're moving, but you're in a ride vehicle and essentially moving left to right with the giant screen in front of you. I mean, as we see some of the technologies that were new when Horizons opened in 1983, and then just, I love this. I love the idea that you could get up so close and have these audio animatronics, then have the screen, then go back to the audio animatronics, and then, of course, have the ending. Just so much to offer. And, of course, you must have a space shuttle scene if you are going to have a Disney attraction at that time period. We always love the space shuttle. You have to love the space shuttle, and this is still. And now we have entered the tomorrow's window section, and we watch the kids getting ready to go on their undersea exploration. Of course, seaweed, not kelp. Very important to note that, everyone. But, I mean, there's just so much to Horizons. This is one, I feel like, even more than the Great Movie Ride, at least for me, Horizons was the big loss that I feel in Epcot. Like, you know, I know imagination needs help, and energy's gone, and world of motion's gone. But this one I feel as much as anything. And, you know, this outer space with the music and everything. And speaking of imagination, we have now entered a cool, really beautiful part, which sometimes we forget about how cool this area was because everybody's mostly focused on the original kind of Figment and Dreamfinder flying scene on the turntable. But after that, there was a lot of beautiful scenes that today's version, I hate to be the old man, just doesn't really cut it. And of course, you have Figment singing as we go through the theater section. I mean, this is one of those where I go back and watch it, and I'm like, there's so much I've forgotten from imagination that was not there, or that I just don't think about. I get focused on that first 5 minutes, but even this scene with all the Figment singing, you know, imagination and everything else, it's just very cool. I mean, One Little Spark is technically the name of the song, but you get the idea. Just great. And now we have moved on to kind of the final segment. We spend a lot of time here. I really must have enjoyed Spectra Magic because I spent the rest of this video essentially videotaping Spectra Magic, which this was during the initial run of Spectra Magic. It began in October 1991. First run ended in May 99, so we were about a year from the end of the first run. Then there was another basically 9-year run from 2001 to 2010. We have the Spectra Magic Trumpeters unit right from the start. We're at the beginning. A little creepy, these guys, I have to say. But this is one where I think it's a classic parade. I love the Main Street Electrical Parade, which we always called the Electric Light Parade when I was a kid. But I also, you know, if you went to the parks in the 90s and 2000s, this was mostly your parade at the Magic Kingdom. As we see, you know, the whirly balls, those fun floats going around there at the beginning here. And most of the clips from this are going to be from this beginning section of Spectra Magic. And I've got to say, you know, I know there's more high-tech parades that have been put in place since this point. but it still holds up pretty well. The fact that it was still running until 2010. And unfortunately, though, unlike the Main Street Electrical Parade, we have heard that Spectra Magic apparently has been destroyed. Like, the floats are no longer around. If they were going to do something like this, they would have to essentially start from scratch. I want to take a moment, though, to talk about how unfortunate it is that we don't have a nighttime parade in Magic Kingdom, given the popularity of the park and given everything else, as the Spectra Magic title float goes by. But Disney, I understand this has to do with crowds and capacity and everything else. They want people to be able to stand all over the place to get ready for, fireworks. But I feel like you're missing something by not having a parade, which was such an important part of my trips when I was younger, and even with my girls when they were younger with the Main Street Electrical Parade. There is Mickey up there we saw there as we are kind of going through these floats, and we have these Silly Symphonies floats here, and you'll have, in a moment, we will see a surprise guest who ultimately in the second run was replaced by the Genie, as Aladdin had gotten so popular and was not known when this parade was replaced. But there he is, Mr. Roger Rabbit, who, you think about October 1991, Roger Rabbit, very popular from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And then there were a lot of plans for the Disney MGM Studios with getting more Roger Rabbit in the parks. So it doesn't surprise me that Roger Rabbit would be in Spectra Magic. It's not as surprising as like seeing King Leonidas or something, in parades, right? Where I went, really? Wait, who is that? It's not, Prince John from Robin Hood. You see Goofy there playing the drums. We've got some of the classic characters here as we go through this float, and near the end in a minute we'll see Chip and Dale on the piano. But first we have the dancing, basically, I don't know if you call those, not really guitars, like a bass maybe, I don't know, and next to the lit up saxophone. Just very cool stuff as we kind of near the end of this video. And there's Chip and Dale playing piano here, and just a really fun parade that you cannot underestimate the importance of having a parade at the park, and just people stay longer. They may not do attractions. Anything you can do, like we've seen it with Fantasmic as the nighttime spectacular returning to Disney's Hollywood Studios. More of this, Disney, as we see the Sleeping Beauty's garden, and we're nearing the end of what I have from this. I wish I had the entire parade, but I love this kind of glimpse into what Walt Disney World was like in May 1998. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you like what I'm doing, check out my interviews, tomorrowsociety.com. Look at all your podcast providers. It's really fun to go back and look at these old videos, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you again next time.